first, live, local. This is Fox 12 Now.
And hello, everyone. Welcome to Fox 12 Now. I'm Greg Nibbler. There is our live shot from the Shriners Cam overlooking the city of Portland. Yes, there are some clouds there. I think it's about 54 degrees right now, but still, you know what? It's not too bad, and it's not raining right now, so that's all right. Well, maybe it is where you are, but you can follow up with all of that at kptv.com. Again, I'm Greg Nibbler. This is Fox 12 Now. We are live streaming here every weekday starting at 1 p.m. Pacific, and we go throughout the afternoon, bringing you all kinds of different segments and comments, and we are live streaming on Facebook, YouTube, our website, and our apps. But as you can see on that lower third, we are talking about tipping culture, whatever you want to call it. I think a lot of people have seen more options to tip for services or food or whatever it may be in different places over, the last short amount of time here. And we wanted to find out, well, we didn't, but DHM Research wanted to find out what people in the state of Washington thought about that, their opinions. And so that's what we're going to be going through are the results of this poll. To do so, of course, we have John Horvick joining us from DHM. And John, always great to have you on here to talk about this. And, I imagine if people are watching this on Facebook or YouTube, there are probably some comments that people have about this. It does seem to be something where a lot of people have opinions. And I know that's kind of the basis of what you were doing here with this research. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. So at DHM Research, we regularly survey Oregonians and Washingtonians on any number of issues. This is the survey we happen to have in the field in Washington. And we were just in the office talking about what people are doing themselves. And, it just came up as something that people had different experiences, different takes. And we just thought, hey, we're going to do a survey in Washington. Let's throw some questions in there on this issue and see what we find out.
Yeah, and certainly, I think this is a discussion that you mentioned that this is just something you're doing in your office, and I imagine a lot of offices and friends, family. I mean, I've certainly had a discussion with my friends over it, and yeah, there's a lot of opinions on this. So I think that's a really great idea to get this research out there. And so to emphasize for everybody too, I mean, can you just let everybody know like how expansive this poll is too? Because this covers a wide demographic, all kinds of things.
Yeah. This is a survey of Washington adults, so anybody who is over 18 was eligible to be reached out to. And then it covers the entire state. So from Seattle to Spokane, Democrats, Republicans, folks who are younger or older, different income levels. So it's meant to be representative. It is representative of the adult population in Washington.
Great. And, I know I've got some of the things that you sent over here. Just, I don't know if you want to start off with this first one.
Sure.
Just to give a visual representation here.
Yeah, so, we're asked to, tip in different places. And I think we've all sort of have felt sometimes, am I supposed to tip in this situation or not? Or, maybe I used to not tip, but now they're asking me to tip with the screen or something. And so there's just some uncertainty about in what situations are you supposed to tip or do you tip? And so we just began this part of the survey by asking people, how frequently you're tipping in these different situations. And so these numbers represent people who say, yeah, I'm tipping all the time or most of the time. So at a sit-down restaurant, as much as 90% of folks are saying, yeah, all the time, most of the time, I'm tipping. And then at the bottom of the scale there is at the coffee shop, just 53% say that they're tipping always or most of the time. This has real implications of what people's, bills are for when they're out and about doing stuff. Also has some big implications for those workers too, right? So if you are, all else being equal, you're much more likely to get a tip if you're a server at a restaurant than you're a barista at a coffee shop, almost twice as much. So that's a big deal. The other one that we were talking about in the shop is just, rideshare and delivery apps. And most people are tipping in those situations, but it's lower than say restaurants. And so if you're getting some food, tip a restaurant, but not as many people are tipping, say their rideshare driver or their app delivery food.
Interesting. Yeah, and I know that's a big part of, or can be a big part of the income for those people who are driving as well, are those tips. So I wonder how that affects the rating if you are the person taking the ride afterward, because they do rate. Although I guess maybe they don't see that part. But regardless, that's seeing that big range there. I think the sit-down restaurant part, 90%. So that sounds like pretty much everybody's on board.
Pretty much everybody's on board, but Greg, if you go to the next slide, I think that question just says, "Hey, are you tipping?"
Yeah. No, that's not that one. Yeah. There we go.
Yeah, so then we ask, specifically for sit-down restaurants, how much are you tipping? And that's the other question, right? It's one thing to say you tip or not. It's another thing to indicate, how much you're doing. And we ask this in terms of percentage. And so, people could have put it on a range, where they're at. And at the most here, 20% or more, about 1 out of 4 Washingtonians say that they're tipping 20% or more when they go to a sit-down restaurant. Well, that means 75% are tipping less. And so you see 41% there are in that 15 to 19% range and then below. Now, I will say overall, when you look at these results on all the tipping questions that we asked about, mostly people are similar. That is, for the most part, men and women are similar, except for haircuts. Women tip more frequently for haircuts, but mostly the similarities by gender, by area of the state, by political party. So Democrats, Republicans, we don't see big differences there by tipping. The one place we do see a difference is age. And it's age, not income. So you might think, well, young people don't have as much money as those who are older, but it's really age that drives it. And so at a restaurant, people who are older, 65 plus, are about 3 times more likely to tip at the high end than those who are 18 to 29.
Wow.
And we will see some other age differences here. So here in this maybe traditional setting, where people sit down at a restaurant, something that people have been doing for a long time, like older folks are more likely to tip at a higher amount than those who are younger. But there are other times where young people do feel differently than those who are older, and that's about tipping on screens.
Tipping on screen, and I know that
On
we've got some
screen.
data on that.
You're right. We got some data. And that, as much as anything, is what drove our curiosity about this survey, because at least it's my impression, pre-pandemic, some of these screens were around, but they weren't ubiquitous. And it seems to me that they're pretty much ubiquitous. Everywhere you go now, they're asking for a tip. It's pre-populated for you. And so that, as much as anything, we were curious, how are people feeling about this? Because that is a big change from the past. And so we asked whether or not people just, hey, do you support or oppose suggested tips on screens?
And I didn't mean to interrupt. I definitely want to get into that. I just wanted to put out one thing on your other thing here. That
sure.
to me is so surprising, because I feel like the stigma is, and then again, this is not based on any data, but just from myself. Yours is, but that generally speaking, older people tend not to tip as well. That is clearly not backed up by the data on this.
At least that's not backed up by what people believe that they themselves are doing. So this is a report. So this is people's, projections of their own behavior. But what we found here is that, people who are 65 or older are about 3 times more likely to tip at 20% or more than those who are younger. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I love anytime that you have this data here, just to see how it is people are answering on that. Okay, so going back to what you're talking about. So when it comes to those screens that have either the auto-populated tip or a suggested tip that we now see a lot of places, how are people feeling about those?
Yeah, so they are unpopular. So we asked, just like, do you support or oppose them, or just to get a sense, how people are feeling about it. And just 33% say that they are in favor of these sorts of screens. And so, this is not something that at least consumers like. They are pretty clearly telling us that they don't like this. Now, obviously, it must have implications for workers and for retailers, and so there must be some real positive values for one side of this transaction. But consumers are telling us really clearly this is something that they dislike. Just 1 out of 3 favor them. Now, we were just talking about this age thing, right? So older people are more likely to tip 20% or more when they're going down to sit at a restaurant. But it is younger folks, actually, who are more supportive of these screens than those who are older. Now, no group is particularly excited about them. But if you go this next one. So we see from on the left side, this is the support for these screens by age from top to bottom, for older to younger. And so just 17% of those who are 65 and older say that they're in favor of them. And it's 49% of those who are 18 to 29. Now, 49% is less than half. So particularly embraced by any group, but there does appear to be a generational difference here. And so perhaps it's what people are comfortable with when they're coming into, say, adulthood, or when they're making more purchases on their own. And perhaps it's just what you grew up with, and sort of what you think is normal or right. Well, this will be interesting to watch over time, to see if this sort of favorability increases over the years as younger people sort of age into, or this ages into normality as generations sort of progress. But that's one thing. The other is that we looked at among those who tip more at restaurants, and that's the one metric we have here for the sort of the amount of tipping. Did they feel differently? And a little bit. Those who tip less, 10% or less, are less favorable towards screen than those who tip more. So if you tip 20% or more, 38% of those, the population, screens are but lower for those who tip less. Now, again, there's not a group here that's particularly excited about these screens, but we do see a little bit of difference there among bigger tippers and smaller tippers, and even more of a difference by age.
Yeah. I mean, as you mentioned, even that 18 to 29% is still less than half, or 18 to 29-year-old. Yeah. So it's not popular, is the general.
No, not popular. It's not popular. Again, I suspect that they have real benefits for retailers, and probably for a lot of service workers themselves who are benefiting from seeing those options come up for folks, but not popular for consumers. And people will be able to make choices for themselves now that they see these data. And I think for us in the office in particular, we just didn't know. We didn't know what other people were doing. We didn't know what was normal, not necessarily what's right.
Right.
So people can make different choices about what's best, or what people should do, but just what are people doing? And hopefully this provides a little bit of guidance for folks about what other people are doing.
Yeah, I love this. I mean, and again, for those who maybe just joined, but this is a broad range of people surveyed in the state of Washington, their thoughts on tipping across those several different issues. And yeah, I think that's honestly, there were a couple of things in there that I was not that surprised about. I feel like the not being happy about the screen thing does seem to be a general opinion that I've heard from other people, my unscientific survey. But the age difference on who is tipping more typically in a sit-down restaurant, I was kind of surprised by that data. So yeah, really interesting stuff. Anything else that you think people should know just about this survey in general?
Well, we often talk about differences because differences are important, but sometimes the lack of differences are just as valuable. And here, I did call out the differences by age because that's where some things stand out. But probably the bigger takeaway is the similarity across Washingtonians. There weren't big differences by some of the demographics that we typically expect to see. And so, that's as important to pay attention to where there's differences.
Yeah. Fantastic. Well, John, as always, so great to have you on here. And for everybody out there, too, who wants to follow up on this and all the other polling and surveys and data that you have out there available, what's the best place for them to do that?
Come on over to our website, dhmresearch.com. If you want to see the results here, and for a lot of the other studies we do, go to the Insights page, and you'll find this and a lot more.
Yeah, it's really easy to fall down the rabbit hole too of just going through all of those and looking at all that data and what you've pulled. So it's fascinating. So John, thank you as always for being here.
All right, thank you. Cheers.
Cheers. And for those joining us again, this is Fox 12 Now. I appreciate you being here. So coming up at 1:30 p.m., if you're watching live, it's about 1:17 right now. So in about 10 minutes or so, we will be talking about tax scams. Yes, it's tax day, and I'm sure a lot of you have filed, but that doesn't mean scammers aren't still out there going at it, trying to get your money and trick you. And they are working overtime right now. I've already personally received a couple of texts and phone calls from people trying to convince you that you need to give them money. So that we're going to talk about that. 1:30, what to watch out for yourself and for maybe those other people in your family that may be more likely to fall victim to that. So we don't want that to happen. So we'll be discussing that 1:30 p.m. with an expert. And again, this is Fox 12 Now. We're live streaming on Facebook, YouTube, our website, and our apps. So thank you for being here and joining us. We're here every weekday at 1 o'clock. So set that appointment and join us for whatever it is that we're going to talk about, because it's a wide range of subjects on this show. You can watch all of those on the Fox 12 Oregon app. I highly suggest downloading that way you can check out everything that Fox 12 Now does and everything else we have going on here at Fox 12 Oregon. But we'll take a break. We'll reset. Join me right back here in about 10 minutes or so. I'm Greg Nibbler. This is Fox 12 Now.